Okay, great. So again, my name is Christine Palmer. I represent Jefferson County Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We work to promote effective and accountable government, sustainable development, and the protection of health, heritage, and the environment in Jefferson County. We really appreciate you inviting us tonight. We certainly can't fill Mike Donnelly's shoes, but we were happy to be able to come this evening. What I'd like to do is talk about the water bottling plant that's been proposed in Middleway. First, so just what I'd like to talk about is what's happening from a high level. Where are we in the process? How did we get here from a high level again? And then what are our concerns and what can we do? Because there's actually a lot we can do. A lot of times there's not a lot we can do. And in this case, there is a lot that we can do. So first, the water bottling plant. There are some maps. I'll just orient you on your table. There are some maps. And there's a map that looks like this or a variety of this. And then there's a map that looks like this. And so if we look at this one first, so it's a 1 million square foot bottling plant split into 2 phases. Just for some reference, that is a really big water bottling plant. So it's only it's comparable to the PepsiCo plant that's being built currently in Colorado. That's a 1.2 million square foot plant. PepsiCo will bottle 5 of its flagship products there, including Pepsi and Pepsi Zero Sugar. So this is enormous for just a water bottling plant. It is 4 times larger than the Coca-Cola plant, the Dasani plant in Michigan. It is 5 times larger than the Nestle plant that bottles Deer Park and Pure Life water. So it's big, okay?
Could you repeat that, how big it is again?
1 million square feet split into 2 stages. The first phase is smaller, it's about 400, it's almost 400, and the second is a little over 600 square feet, 1,000 square feet. And then this proposal is on both sides of Middleway. So if you look at the bigger map for most of you, this little section in here is Middleway, the historic district of Middleway, and the plant is over here, and it's getting its water. It's a groundwater bottling plant, and it's getting its groundwater from wells over here next to a spring pool called Lake Louise. Lake Louise is a little bit of a misnomer. It's a spring pool. And there are 3 wells that the company has put in there, and the company owns property over there as well. And then water will be taken from those wells, and it will traverse from the wells through a underground water pipeline to the plant. And that's kind of what's in that dotted line in most of the maps that are on the table. So that's what is happening. And for reference, I told you how big the plant was, so how big are the wells? So the wells have a combined capacity. There's 3 of them. One doesn't work so well because it had a blowout, drilling mud blowout happens, right? But so the other 2 are better. They have a combined capacity of 7.9 million gallons a day. For reference, that's enough water to service all of the human dwelling units in Jefferson County plus 1,200 more. So it's a lot of water, okay? So it's a really big plant, and it has really big capacity on its groundwater wells. So then where are we in the process and how do we get here? So we're at the concept plan stage. The concept plan stage is the first stage in the major site plan development process. It's a really critical stage because it's the first stage that the public has input in, and it's the stage where conditions are defined. So you cannot add conditions that haven't been previously contemplated in the development process. They must be placed now. And then it's also the stage where it's determined whether or not it aligns with the zoning ordinance or not. Okay, so that's really critical. And so that's where we are. How did we get here? So, we're getting ready for the public workshop, which is a phase where we can tell the Planning Commission what conditions we want them to place on the plant. Those conditions must be based in the zoning ordinance, and I'll come back to that. So how did we get here? So in 2023, the owners of the property applied to have a waiver so they could process their subdivision as they divided their property as a minor subdivision, even though it qualified as a major. And they were given that waiver. The foundation asked them to proffer. We said we would not object if they proffered that the floodplain essentially of that property would be Greenland forever for public use. They proffered that right away, and we thought, oh, that's not good. And so they were asked at that time what they were gonna do with the property, and they said they had no idea. Frustratingly, at that time, they had already had the wells on the property for well over a year. And so clearly they did know what they wanted to do, but insisted that they did not. So we didn't know what they were doing with the property. They came in September of 2024 with their first version of their concept plan. That went to a public workshop in early November 12th. It was rejected at that time by the Planning Commission because it was found to be incomplete, because they did not list the source of the water. It's hard to approve a water bottling plant when you don't list the source of the water, because it really changes the land use. And as I said before, one of the things they have to do is determine if it aligns with the zoning ordinance. And they need to know what the source of the water is to do that. And so it was rejected at that time. The applicant submitted a new application on the 18th. Oddly, on the 15th, the staff from the Planning Commission filed a request to put in a public notice in the paper that there would be a special meeting on the 17th of December to evaluate the concept plan again. Unfortunately, there is a required 45-day period, evaluation period, that has to happen. It's statutorily required. It is in the subdivision regulations. The foundation asked the Planning Commission to reschedule so they could accommodate that statutorily required review period. They declined. Our attorney sent them a letter. They declined again. The foundation, this is the first time we've ever sued the county. We've done a lot of legal actions, but this is the first time we've ever sued the county. But we felt like we had to, because we think this is an important thing and we feel like we should follow the rules. And so the foundation took legal action to require them to go ahead and do the 45-day process, which includes allowing agencies outside of the Planning Commission to evaluate the plan. They already only have 24 days in that 45-day process, and so they had no time the first time around, and so now they will have their full time period. And one of those, importantly, are things like the emergency services. The emergency services only has an opportunity to have input at the Planning Commission, at the concept plan stage, as well as other outside agencies. So that is where we are. The court said that the new date would be February 11th, and so the new date is February 11th. So what are some of the concerns that we have with this water bottling plant? The foundation does have concerns. Sorry, dear. The foundation does have concerns with the water bottling plant. One of them has to do with the wells. Excuse me. One of them has to do with the wells. And so our concern is that with such a massive water drawdown, you might just say, hang on, Chrissy, we've got JUI, American Water now, they've got groundwater wells and they're servicing homes. The capacity of these wells is much greater than the JUI system. JUI also has many different wells across the county, so you can think of this as this is one straw. JUI has many different straws, and so they're spreading their draw over a much larger area. This is draw one location. So our concern is groundwater drawdown. The company was unwilling at the first meeting to limit their drawdown because the developers that are the current applicants, from what they have said publicly, they are not the end user. And so they will either sell or lease this property to an end user, and so they, for obvious reasons, don't want to limit their groundwater draw. And so our concern is that this area of the county and the whole county, we know the whole county and Jefferson County is connected from a groundwater standpoint because we have karst hydrology. We know the groundwater here moves very quickly, and so one of our concerns is that it would draw down the water and there would be less water available. Is it better if I hold it closer or further away?
Closer.
Like this. Okay. So our concern is that it would draw down the water, and the farms that rely on that water will not have enough water to continue farming. I am a large animal veterinarian by training and practice. You cannot raise large animals horses and cows on city water, okay? It's not, you can't do it. And so, not just from a cost standpoint, but also a health standpoint, right? Horses do not eructate, they cannot drink bleach, okay? So, they, I hear someone laughing. So that's a problem, is this could really limit our future for farming. The other issue is that may not be as obvious, is because we are in a karst environment, as you draw down water, you have an increased rate of what are called cover collapse sinkholes. So you may have seen sinkholes in Jefferson County. You probably have all seen sinkholes in Jefferson County. Those are not cover collapse sinkholes. Those are solution channel sinkholes. So like slowly the dirt falls down in between the rocks and goes away. Sometimes it opens larger spaces, but it's usually slow. Not on the order of seconds, but at least on the order of days and weeks, and usually actually on the order of years, right? In the case of cover collapse, think of those massive sinkholes you see in Florida, or that set of 4 soccer fields that collapsed and like a giant part in the middle. That's a cover collapse sinkhole. And it's because there's a cavern that's water filled underground. And as the level of the groundwater is drawn down, the top of that cavern is no longer supported and the cover collapses, right? So, and that happens rapidly, really fast, seconds to minutes. And it's usually large and it's dramatic, and it can swallow things like horses, cows, tractors, and it can kill people. Houses, right? Okay, houses, right? And so in the rural area, there are fewer houses and more tractors, cows, and people, but still, it's a big problem and a concern. Farmers shouldn't have to be concerned that they're going to just drop into the earth one day with their tractor. And so that's a second concern. A third concern, and this is particular to this location in the county, is that due to its legacy being an industrial site, there is a pollution plume in the groundwater of trichloroethylene and dichloroethylene. These are carcinogens down here, at least down here in this area, okay? The water in this area flows in this northwesterly direction towards the Opequon. And so it's thought that the people in this location over here, in the voluntary remediation plan, which I won't go into that at all, but it's basically when they clean a place up at the DEP, right? They monitor people cleaning stuff up. It was thought that that would be spreading this way if it's spreading, because that's the way the water moves. However, if we start drinking out of this straw over here in the cola bottle, and we drink real fast, right? Then it may actually start to draw the water this way. And we certainly didn't make this up. The DEP actually brought this to our attention because we didn't think that was possible. And then we asked our karst hydrogeologist about it. And so we're concerned that the pollution will actually move this way. All of the homes that you see on these maps are on groundwater wells, and they would like to stay that way. And so that's our other concern here. Our final concern, maybe not our final concern, but an additional concern, our next concern, is I'm just totally taking up all your space here. No, is the zoning ordinance. So I put on your tables a packet looks like this. This is the first page. There's other pages of it. So this use does not align with the zoning ordinance. I'm just going to walk you through that from a really high level. It's actually really simple. So if we look in the zoning ordinance section 1.3D, which is here. So 1.3D says that if a use is not listed as a permitted use in a zone or any zone, it is prohibited, as though it were listed in the list of prohibitions, okay? So if you look at these pages, there's 4 of these, they're printed front and back, okay? And so this is the list of permitted uses, it's Appendix C. And if you look on these pages, you will not find groundwater extraction, okay? You will find mineral extraction, but you will not find groundwater extraction. You also don't find any other use that covers groundwater extraction. And the way we know that is because we look at these industrial uses, and then they're defined in the ordinance, which I printed here, kind of the most extreme use, which is heavy industrial use, okay? Heavy industrial use is the use that they've said describes what they're doing, and it, if you read it, does not cover the extraction of any natural resource, including groundwater from the ground. And so it's not covered by that, and it's not covered, and you can look it up. I didn't print the 27 pages of definitions for you, but you can look it up in the county zoning ordinance. It's easily accessible from the Planning Commission's website. And the rest of these uses also do not cover the extraction, of any natural resource from the ground except for mineral extraction, which you see is not permitted in any zone. It is conditionally permitted in 2 zones, and those are the heavy industrial zone, the major industrial zone and the industrial commercial zone. And so groundwater is not a use contemplated by our zoning ordinance. It is not a permitted use, and therefore, according to 1.3D, it is prohibited as though it were listed, a prohibited use listed in the list of prohibitions. 1.3D goes on to say that if you would like to use a use that is not permitted, you must seek a zoning text amendment through the Article 12 process. Article 12 is a different section of the zoning ordinance in Jefferson County. It's also described, not Article 12, but there's a portion of the state code that tells you how that works. And then we also have the Article 12 process in Jefferson County in our zoning ordinance that tells you how it works. And so we believe that it is not a permitted use it is not permitted based on our zoning ordinance. It does not conform to the zoning ordinance. It is essentially illegal based on our zoning ordinance. The applicant says, and I meant to print this out, but I did not, and so I really apologize, but you can Google it, it comes up in about 1 second. So at the state, in the zoning code, there in the land use code, there is section 8A710E, 8A710E, and the A is big and the E is little. 8A710E, and that says that the code, the zoning code, shall not limit the use of natural resources by the owner, okay? And the applicant says, well, that means that the county can't limit groundwater extraction. And we would argue that extraction is not use, and that selling something is not using it. Mm-hmm. And someone else doing it is not the owner doing it. We believe firmly that that is the right to farm clause and there are many right to farm clauses in our state code, but that's one of them. Importantly, that's the one in the zoning, in the land use section, in 8A, chapter 8A. And we think that because the second part of that says that, zoning cannot limit farming, okay? And so we believe that clearly this is use by owner, not extraction for sale by someone else, which is what the applicant has applied for here. And so we don't believe that that applies in this case, because we believe that applies to rural homeowners and farmers who need to draw the water to feed their animals and their crops and other things like that and their families. So those are the issues from a high level. There are other issues, but those are the kind of high level view. So what can we do about this? How can we take action? So luckily we have this public workshop coming up on February 11th. So we can go to our planning commission and we can say, hey, we don't think this aligns with the zoning ordinance. The planning commission, you may have heard, is very limited in what it can do, and that is true. They are very limited in what they can do. They are also limited by the zoning ordinance. They can only do a few things. They can accept it, they can accept the concept plan and give direction to the applicant to continue to the site plan stage. They can deny the concept plan, or they can accept it and put conditions on it. If they deny it, they must deny it for a reason in the zoning ordinance. Well, I just explained to you that it doesn't align with the zoning ordinance. So we believe that they should deny it and tell the applicant, you're relying on groundwater extraction. It is not considered in our zoning ordinance. If you would like to continue, you need to go through the Article 12 process to seek a zoning text amendment. Why is that important? That's important because then this moves to the zoning text amendment. And I'm sad that Commissioner Mood just left, because a zoning text amendment goes to the county commission, an elected board, not the planning commission. It goes to both, but it ends at the county commission, an elected board with more accountability, that's what the foundation stands for, to the people, right? And I think that's also what We the People stands for, right? And so that accountability. But also importantly, because groundwater extraction was never considered as a use in our zoning ordinance, we also did not consider protections for that land use in our zoning ordinance. So our planning commission doesn't have the ability to ask for things that would protect surrounding property owners, like a groundwater study, a limit to how much water they could extract, paying the county for taking the water, okay? Things like that, that could then pay for water studies and that kind of thing in the future, right? So these things were not contemplated because it's not contemplated as a use. If we went through the Article 12 process and it went to the county commission, they have the ability to contemplate and put in writing protections like this that would protect other landowners. The other thing that the planning commission can do, so they can deny it and say, you must go through the Article 12 process if you'd like to use this, otherwise you can use some other source of water, the OPECN, for example. Or they can accept it actually and say, under the condition that you will not use groundwater extraction for bottling. And that would mean that it would align with the zoning ordinance, right? Because the part that doesn't align with the zoning ordinance is that they're extracting groundwater, which is not a permitted use. If they went on and did it and got the water from somewhere else, it may then align with the zoning ordinance. So the planning commission could cure the non-conformance to the zoning ordinance by putting on that condition. Does that make sense? So we are asking the planning commission to do one of those two things: deny, send them to Article 12, or approve with the condition. And if they don't like that condition, they may go to the Article 12 process. There's precedent for this. We just went through the Article 12 process. Some of you might still have PTSD from the solar zoning text amendment. That was the process it went through, right? They came in and wanted to do utility scale solar, and they were told, whoa, 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 you need to go through the Article 12 process. And we believe that it's the same here. And so what can you do to affect change that will positively impact our county and Middleway for generations to come? So one, I passed out these little quarter cards. On there, there's a QR code and a bit.ly link. Either type in the QR code, the bit.ly link, or scan the QR code. You can submit public comment at that page. You can read more. So I encourage you to submit public comment. And at that page, there's a portal. You can just delete what's in there if you want to and write your own and hit send, and it'll go to where it's supposed to go. We have suggested comments. You can use some of those, get rid of some of those. You can personalize them, send them. Whatever you want to do, it's there for your use. Spread it around to your friends and neighbors. Get them to go to that site. They can read essentially what I just said. And they can also send in public comment. Come to the meeting, the public workshop, and give public comment and tell them what your concerns are and ask them to do one of those two things. Deny it because it doesn't align, or accept it and put a condition on that they can't use groundwater for any reason, including bottling. And that otherwise they can go to the Article 12 process. And does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Is the workshop put on by you, or is it the county?
No, that is the county. So you can actually read about that in the subregs. It's like it's like a public hearing, but it's not quite. It's different. It runs a little bit differently. And the difference with it is the public can ask for these conditions, and then the planning commission can put on these conditions. A public hearing is usually something where the body hears about something and then they approve or not approve. Approve and not approve is not a thing in this decision. It's either they deny or they give direction, or they give direction with conditions. So it's a public workshop. It's really supposed to be we're all working together.
You know the
It's
time?
not quite how it goes.
Is it one of those day ones?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Is that a planning commission meeting?
That's a planning commission meeting. The planning commission is the only public body that makes a decision on this, unless it were to go to the Article 12.
And aren't these guys having a workshop?
They're having an open house on the 15th at the fire hall,
It's January 15th.
January 15th, Wednesday.
Wednesday,
At 7?
yeah. Starlinder.
Right?
No, 5:30 to 7:30, I think.
Oh, okay.
When is it?
Wow, I have that on my calendar wrong. So glad we talked about this.
So is that where we bring the pitchforks and the rotten tomatoes, or is that where we go to ask questions?
I think that we're gonna ask questions, right, Mike? We're gonna ask questions at that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That is their event to be an open house, like a town hall to the citizens.
Like today, why Sidewinder is in Charleston with their representative from Orion. Would be an interesting question to ask.
So it's 7:30 at the fire station?
Charleston,
It's the firehouse in Middleway.
Firehouse in Middleway.
7:30.
is the other one, the 11th?
The 11th is, okay, so actually, the foundation has requested that they move it, because last time people left because there was no place to sit or stand. So we think they will have it at, they sent us an email saying they will have it at one of the high schools. They still have not announced which one. So it has to be in the paper by this Thursday, so we'll know by this Thursday. Or Friday, whenever the paper comes. So.
Jefferson or Washington.
It'll either be Jefferson or Washington. We would hope it's Washington.
Yeah.
Not because, but because that's like closer to Middleway, but we have no idea what they'll do. We hope it's at Washington. But,
Not the library,
What did she say about
not the library.
not the library.
town hall?
I mean, we will have to
What
see
is
what
that?
I would just say, I won't promise anything, but they emailed the foundation and said, we are going to have it at one of two high schools. Like, I don't want to lie to you, that's as much as we know.
What's the date though?
January 15th.
Yeah,
In case if, for example,
15.
Yeah,
they
that's the other one.
will be getting close to succeed to what they want to do, is there any research about the aftermath of the chemicals of the water bowl, because they're gonna be selling water? There's a lot of research about the chemicals contained in plastic water bottles.
7:30,
Mm.
wasn't
So they
it?
will start spraying that
I'm not sure. I wasn't.
nanoplastics,
Mm.
I think it was
BPA, so
yeah.
all this concern. Because that's another aspect is why not be contemplated.
It certainly is a concern, I would agree with you. I mean, I myself found out like a few months ago that my well at my farm, that we've just been like drinking for years, is highly contaminated with PFAS. Like 10 times above what the EPA says is not safe but acceptable. And so like I drink bottled water every day because we have to get a filtration system put in. So bottled water is, you're right, has a lot of concerns. And those things have not been contemplated in this process because there's not a mechanism for that right now. Now, if they came to the county commission and said, we would like to do a zoning text amendment and add water bottling, like plastic water bottling, our county commission could say, no, we're against plastic water bottling. And we're not gonna have that regardless of the groundwater extraction. I think they would argue that it's covered under the manufacturing or heavy industrial use or whatever, and I think they'd probably be right. So we could contemplate that, but not through this process.
Yeah, but with the new health department that is coming with Kennedy, that's gonna be an issue.
Yeah, so he may change that at the national level, and if he does, that'll certainly change what we do here.
Right.
But through our ordinances that we have right now, what's not allowed about this is the groundwater extraction.
Yeah, but somehow the ordinances also can evolve to new concepts, like new amendments.
They sure can, right, exactly. And so we could certainly talk to our elected officials at the county commission level and say, hey, we want a new ordinance that says X, Y, Z, and then they might be able to take that on. But the planning commission, this stage, not a place to take it on. Yes, Jen? You guys just cut me off when you want me to be quiet.
Could you address, I've been receiving some questions about, CTUB's involvement in
Great, yeah.
that. People think that because the agreement was rescinded, that the whole thing went away, but that's not true. Could you
Ooh.
address that?
Not true at all. That's good.
Yeah.
So, the bigger maps actually are from CTUB. They are Exhibit A, so if you look at the biggest map, they're Exhibit A from the agreement between CTUB and Sidewinder. I didn't talk about it, but CTUB has an agreement with Sidewinder that they made earlier in 2024. And you may have heard positive things about it, you may have heard negative things about it, and I would say that's because there are both. So the process that brought us to have this agreement were not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We would say they didn't follow the Open Meetings Act. They didn't adhere to them. However, the agreement, which allows CTUB, in the agreement, CTUB takes over ownership and operation of the water line. So from here to here, after it's constructed. They don't pay for the construction, they get to look at the plans and say, we don't like that part there, fix it. They also get to say, in the end, we inspected it and we don't like what you did here, you gotta fix it. And the company has to fix it at their expense. So essentially it comes to CTUB as CTUB likes it. and CTUB doesn't have to pay for it. CTUB will own and operate it. They will have to pay for the operation, but it's a brand new subterranean raw water main. And then there's a very tiny little treatment plant over here, and CTUB will lease that. CTUB will pay Sidewinder $1 for 100 years, so a penny a year. Money has to change hands there, and so that's like the least amount, because hay pennies aren't printed anymore. And so Sidewinder will lease it to CTUB for $1. They will operate that to give Sidewinder domestic water, up to 10,000 gallons of domestic water a day. And then at some time in the future, undefined and possibly not to happen, CTUB will also supply up to 200 domestic users of that water outside of this property. If there are other users within this property in the future, CTUB will also supply them with domestic water.
Berkeley County isn't
Okay.
doing it now?
So Berkeley County still has an agreement right now with Sidewinder. They have gone through 3 agreements to put in a pipe from the other side, you're correct, and supply the water. And so it's possible that when CTUB hook, when they get this all worked out, this treatment plant up and running, that Berkeley County may no longer supply water. And if that happens before Berkeley County ever supplies water, they may not supply water. Berkeley County they don't have enough water. So I don't know, but I think they'll be happy not to supply water over here. But the reason they are supplying water is because CTUB didn't have infrastructure out here. Now they're going to have infrastructure out here. Importantly, CTUB won't process or charge the development for the raw water that they take for bottling.
Or who's paying for it?
No one. It's coming out of the ground. So
Oh,
it's
I understand.
Sidewinder's taking it out of the ground, putting it through CTUB's pipe. I apologize to trying to work both things. I'm doing a very bad job. So it'll come out as groundwater. It won't be treated. It'll just be transported through the water main, and then it'll go to the plant, directly to the bottling plant, be treated there, likely by filtration and reverse osmosis. That's how most water bottling is done, but we don't know. And then the treatment plant will be here to supply domestic water. Well, you and then you, yeah, go. Sorry.
It seems like that's an incredible natural resource that
Mhm.
should be used for public use, not to commercial. Because in the near future, who knows how the water will be depleted on the underground.
Yeah,
And
and this is industrial use, not a commercial
That's
use.
why we need a water study, but it's not being done, right?
yeah,
Right.
but somehow as a powerful resource, like an incredible resource, it should be available for
Yeah.
a future case.
I would agree with you. So a few things there. So one, groundwater is, in West Virginia, there's no such thing as water rights, like you don't own your water, right? In West Virginia, the state of West Virginia owns all water, surface or underground, and everybody has the right to use it reasonably. And so the law is reasonable use. There are 16 reasonable use states in the United States. West Virginia is one of them. The other states are water rights states. The water rights states are west of the Mississippi. The reasonable use states are east of the Mississippi. The foundation would advocate for the continuation of reasonable use, because when you look at states that have reasonable use, the people that benefit are the people, like you and me, and farmers. When you look at water rights states, the people who benefit are large corporations, and the people who lose out are people like you and me and farmers. And so, we would advocate for that system to continue, and we would also say that this is not a reasonable use of groundwater.
Right.
Precisely. There's a small issue with that, which is it hasn't been brought to the court yet, and so there's a little bit of a question of when that question is ripe. The foundation attorneys are clearly working on that, but that's a little bit more difficult than the zoning.
Yeah, but those questions mostly are not contemplated because we haven't evolved to a certain degree of conflicts. But if.
Well, no one's tried this before, as I would say. So in West Virginia, the 2 largest water bottling facilities is one Tyler Mountain and the second is Berkeley Springs, okay? And both of them use Well, Tyler Mountain uses municipal water, right? They just buy municipal water like Coca-Cola does, and then they treat it and they bottle it and they sell it, okay? And then we all know where Berkeley Springs water comes from. It is surface water. And so both of those, you know, one's using municipal water, one's using surface water. Together, they have more than 60% of the market share. And you know how small Berkeley Springs is, right? Tyler Mountain is not much bigger. This thing is enormous, okay? So this is a whole new territory for us. Most of the groundwater extraction, most of the large quantity users in West Virginia that are not, well, I'll just say, most of the large quantity users in West Virginia are for fracking. So that's like a totally different thing, right? They're not taking that water and selling it elsewhere. They're taking that water and putting it right back in the ground, right? They're taking it out of the ground, putting it back in the ground. Some would argue it's in a different like layer or whatever, but it's still here, right? They're not taking it out. And so that's more what we're used to, and that's on a much smaller scale, certainly than this. The other thing I just wanted to say, go back to the CTUB thing real quick before I get to you, Jackie, is that the foundation believes that the agreement that CTUB had with the developer with Sidewinder is a good agreement. We believe that it benefits the people. We do not, as I think you've seen is clear from my presentation, want the water bottling plant because we do not think groundwater extraction is a good thing, and we think that groundwater needs to be preserved for farmers and rural residential use and to give us surface water. However, we do think the agreement between CTUB and the facility is a good thing. CTUB is a public utility, and we have a lot more transparency with CTUB, we'll be able to tell what is happening with the water main, how much water is going through it, how much water they're processing at the plant, all those types of things, right, through FOIA. CTUB is also meant to be following the Open Meetings Act. So we can go to their meetings. Sometimes they mess up, yes, but we can hold them accountable. We can sue them. We can make complaints. We can ask for people to be taken off the board. We can support candidates we like for the board. Things like that. So we really have a lot more interaction with CTUB, whereas if CTUB were to vacate this agreement and a private utility were to take it over at some point in the future, we think that could be very damaging because the people would not have any insight into what was happening. So we think that this agreement is a good thing, and it gives CTUB first right of refusal to buy the wells as well. So if at some point in the future the wells were to be sold, CTUB could buy them instead of a private utility. We think that that's a major benefit and we also think that the agreement is not the same, but quite a bit similar to a alternate mainline extension agreement, which is how pipelines like this, from a very high level, simple way, Jackie is judging me, but that pipelines like this transfer to a utility that were put in by a developer. Okay, Jackie, and then, yeah.
Okay, so when the water is being processed for the bottling of the water, is there gonna be any waste water coming out of that process, and where do they propose that to go?
That's a really, really interesting question. So, there is wastewater. So I don't know if any of you followed the Rockwell development. So Jefferson County Foundation had, we worked on Rockwell's permits, environmental permits, because that's what we do. We work on the protecting health, heritage, and environment. So we learned a lot on environmental permits. And so their wastewater, you may remember, was a lot from their treating the water by reverse osmosis and the water softening. And that water all goes to CTUB. This is treatment of water on a vastly larger scale, right? Rockwell was taking in 30,000 gallons a day. We're talking about up to 8 million gallons a day here. So that is just like orders of magnitude larger. We don't know how large it will be, but that's because they haven't told us, right? But we know that the wells have that capacity, and so it could be orders of magnitude larger. And so we assume that there will be a lot of wastewater. We don't know where it's going, but it is a major concern of ours because even Rockwell, at its low level, taxed CTUB, right? Like, remember the chloride? CTUB actually appealed its own permit with the DEP. Foundation intervened in that legal action to try to get CTUB to follow the EPA requirements for chloride, so they weren't allowing more than the limit into the river of chloride. We settled that. They decided they would comply, and they did. But it's a major concern, because if CTUB can't handle it, like, where's it going? Berkeley County's only gonna take 10,000 gallons a day, which is probably domestic, well, they said they're only taking domestic. So where the industrial is going, we don't know, so.
Could it be possible to put them a limit according to the future resources?
So, like of draw of water, yeah, so that's part of the Article 12 process. So if you, the rest of you didn't hear what he said, is it possible to put a limit on how much water they draw, based on how much resources are there, based on like a water study of a groundwater resource, a groundwater availability study? And the answer to that is only in the Article 12 process. So we can't do that here because the Planning Commission doesn't have the authority to put on that kind of condition, because conditions must be based in the zoning ordinance. So we'd have to have a zoning text amendment first. In that zoning text amendment, the county commission could decide, you have to do a water study first. Water study has to have these criteria, and then you can only draw X amount. So let's say the water study said they should only draw half a foot. Your pump's gotta turn off when the groundwater drops half a foot from X level, or maybe it says it can drop 5 feet. And so then your pump has to cut off when the groundwater has dropped 5 feet from X level. 5 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about like 200 feet down, then like another half foot. You see what I'm saying? So over acres and acres, it's a very large amount of water.
Yeah, and we know that all over the world, there's been consequences.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been taken seriously.
Right.
With vision to the future of the consequences of them doing those things.
I totally agree with you. And so we are hoping, hoping that they will go to this Article 12 process, and that our county commissioners that have just been elected, we can really work with them, because they wanna work with us, we wanna work with them, right? And we just talked about this earlier, our elections, so that they can work with us to put in some of these really common sense protections. Or maybe the county just decides, you know what? We rely on agriculture, our economy relies on agriculture, relies on the equine industry, and relies on tourism. And so actually, we're just gonna say no right now to groundwater extraction, because we really wanna protect those things in Jefferson County.
I'm gonna give, so we got, it's 18, so I'm just gonna give her 5 more minutes, just cause, Richard has something to do, so present, so, 2 questions left?
Do you wanna jump to the back, cause you haven't asked one yet?
So,
Yeah.
I just wanna make a statement and remind people, particularly when you mentioned state code, the 8A 710E.
Yeah.
And I know a lot is on our county commission with the zoning, but I wanna remind people to be vigilant of our delegates and senators in Charleston as well,
Yeah.
and watch what they're doing. The thing that makes me most nervous is a comment you made that the lobbyist from Orion is in Charleston, and I wanna
With
remind
the owners of
folks-
Sidewinder, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanna remind folks that this happened with the solar, when the county tried to pump the brakes and slow down these solar facilities. The state, some of our representatives got involved in drafting bills and trying to push it through to supersede local zoning. And so I'm just, word of caution to pay attention to what's going on, and I don't know if you can sign up for newsletters or information
Yes.
from the foundation, but pay attention to what our electeds are doing in Charleston as well, because there's nothing worse than having zoning and then having the state supersede it and say it's null and void.
Right, like having our local officials do everything right, and then whoop,
Yes.
whoopsie, that's
Right,
gone,
so I
right?
just wanted to
Yeah.
throw that reminder out there that did happen with the solar, 2 or 3 occasions where the information was extracted, put in another bill, just to try to get around local zoning.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. I'm just gonna jump over here, go ahead.
My concern is many people do not understand that plastic leaches into the liquids of foods or whatever, and it's toxic.
Mhm.
And it is in a large amount. So, all these water bottles in here, these have micro particles of plastic.
Mhm.
They clog our arteries, they get into our organs, and cause serious health complications.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm a medical professional, and I would encourage you to write the FDA, and that's not a joke, right? That's what the FDA regulates, how much plastic can be in that water that's in that bottle, right? And it matters, and they can change that depending on what this plastic is made of. How many softeners are put in the water, for example, affects how much plastic is in the water. And so I encourage you and others to write the FDA and say, please make it so there's less plastic in my water, or so that, I could get a glass bottle somewhere. And so that we clean up some of this PFAS that's in people's wells, which is why, you gotta make choices. Do I want some plastic, or do I want PFAS, or like a lot of PFAS, or like a little bit of, this is my internal thought every day, right? So, but this is not something I would encourage you to bring up at the Planning Commission. Because the Planning Commission does not, different bodies, as you guys know, right? I'm preaching to the choir here, you guys are well informed. Different bodies can only do what the law gives them authority to do, thank God, right? Because otherwise we'd be in a monarchy. So, but in the Planning Commission, boom, they can just follow that ordinance. Gives them the ability to do three things: deny, approve, deny, give direction with conditions. And so it's critical that when you come to the Planning Commission, and I think you all should, and you should tell them what your concerns are, that you end with, I want you to deny this, deny it, put this condition on they can't use groundwater, or, deny, give direction with this condition, and ask them to go to the Article 12 process, so that our elected officials can put some guardrails on here, or we can just decide we don't want this at all here.
And if we do that, this will say, like if we hit this code.
Go to that, yeah, go there.
Give us that framework?
Absolutely. And you can easily submit public comment there. You should do both. You can do both. There's also no limit on who can submit public comment. It's not like voting. If your child who is 12 is learning about how bad plastic water bottles are at school, or they're learning how important our groundwater resources are, especially here in the Great Valley, the original breadbasket of the United States, then they can write a public comment saying why they really care. Okay, so everybody can write it. Yeah.
Do you know how much actual land is involved in this?
Yeah, we do. You can look at the maps on the foundation. This is like 265 or something. This is like 13, and this is like 8 or something. 16 altogether. So yeah.
This is a
Last
very
one.
interesting topic, very important. Is there a way to establish a new ordinances based on all of these topics, a new ordinance before someone else make another ordinance? That was a comment that was.
Before someone else makes another application? Sure. So like if this goes through the Article 12 process, right? Any other application in that time period would be told to like, hang on, like this is already being considered, or you can join this process, right? But also, we could have our, like the county commissioners can make ordinances, right? So we could go to the county commissioners and they could make an ordinance that said, whatever it is you're thinking of, you should contact your representative and say, hey, I'm passionate about this thing, I want to make this ordinance. One of them might be like, yeah, I'm passionate about that too, let's work on this together. Yeah. I think that we're out of time, but I just wanted to say, so the foundation, first of all, thank you so much for letting me come. I think empowering people like yourselves with information that are leaders in your community is very helpful. Also, the foundation is having some forums the last week of January from Monday to Thursday. It's on that little quarter card. So it's on the back of the quarter card, so you flip it over, it tells you the times and places. We're having 4. And you might be like, that is crazy. And the reason we're having 4 is because it's winter and it might be snowing, and we don't want people who live in Shepherdstown to have to drive to Middleway or vice versa. So either pick the day that works for you or pick the place that works for you. The information will be similar. There'll be a lot of questions and answers, so it definitely won't be the same. So if you're passionate, you can certainly come to all 4. But that's the situation. It's mostly the same information at each one, slightly tailored to the different locations. Okay?
Thank you.
I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your tolerance.